Hello, thanks for accessing this lesson. Welcome everyone who is watching this lesson. We are going to be discussing primary 5 content, and we are going to be summarizing this small booklet of primary 5. I hope you got yours, the small one, as we started discussing it in the last lesson. Today we are going to page 43 of this booklet, which gives us the heading that is the demand for Uganda's independence. Of course, this one comes following the other lesson that we say that there was a way that the Ugandans reacted towards colonial rule. We said some people were not happy, whereas others were happy. Now, those who were not happy, of course, we call them resistors in the previous lesson. You will find that they now went an extra mile to find ways of putting everything to an end such that Uganda becomes free from colonial control, that is from British control, and now Uganda gets what we call independence, as we defined already the independence in the previous lesson. I believe you watched that lesson and you have the knowledge of what I'm talking about by now. We are having the first one says there was formation of political parties. We can term it as through forming political parties. We can also say by forming political parties that we shall be coming to look at political parties. We also have people boycotting. Through boycotting, people were boycotting, and then others reacted through staging riots. Those are the ways. Then also we have through staging demonstration. That one matches with riots, and then we shall also say that Ugandans now also started writing their grievances on newspapers. That's what we are having there, as sensitizing other people through newspapers. To sensitize is like to educate, to make someone aware of something. So there was also that that was done by some elites of Uganda. Those ones who were now educated. They could now have a way of making others also awake from the evils of the British that they were doing, as we have it on that sentence. And of course, we shall also be able to note that this also had an upper hand that is in line with the World War. When we go back to page 41, it gives us about the World War. It says it took place between 1939 and 1945. That is a war which was begun by Germany. And we say that all countries, this war was fought in Europe, but you will find that even the countries in Africa, for example, Uganda, also had some men who were taken to join, that is to fight in this world war. So you will find that if a question comes in that way, why were Ugandans taken to fight, or why did Ugandans fight or get involved in fighting the World War I? So you'll find that even Ugandans went to fight. Of course, now you'll find that the African countries were helping their colonial masters. You could find that Uganda, being ruled by the British, could now go to fight, that is to support the British. And then also you could find like those who are ruled by the Germans, like those in Tanzania. That was by then called Tanganyika. When you come to primary 6, we shall be talking much about that. You'll find that if those in Tanzania could go also to support their colonial masters, those were the Germans. So at the end of it all, you'll find the war was fought by the whole world. And then we shall be saying that there was an impact. This war helped Ugandans in fighting for their independence now. How? You will find that the people who went to war fought, and they got that courage, they got that experience in that they were no longer fearing the whites. They learned that these fellow whites could also be fought against and they could be defeated. So it gave them, the war gave them the courage. Those ones who returned, we shall simply call them the veterans. in this context, we shall call them the war veterans, had the courage and they did not have again any fear to go demanding, that is versing them. So they were now ready for them. So in other words, we say the war trained them, or it opened their eyes to learn that these very people can also be fought against and can be defeated. That is why we have that. Then we go to page 42, tells us that it now developed the spirit of nationalism. Nationalism, that is now one's deep love for his or her country. You have a love for your country. We call it nationalism. So the war created a lot of nationalism in the Ugandans, in that they now wanted their country to be free from the bondage of the colonialists. That is what we shall be looking at that. We are now going back to, before we look at political parties, because we are going to talk much about formation of political parties in this very lesson. We have reasons why Ugandans wanted to be independent. Why were Ugandans struggling to be independent? The first reason says they wanted to get fair laws. Of course, we say that before then, the British had what we call the Legislative Council, that we write in full as, we write it in short as LegCo. In full, Legislative Council. Maybe to take you through, we say the Legislative Council, that is LegCo in short, was formed, that is in 1921. We say this is the time when Sir Robert Thorne Corindon was a governor in Uganda, that is during his term of office. And we say it was unfortunate that from this year up to 1945, from that time, we say that this parliament, remember we say the LegCo was the law-making body for the British. It was like their parliament. And we say that that parliament was only full of the whites. It did not have the Africans. There were no Ugandans represented. Therefore, they could make their laws which were favoring them, not the fellow Ugandans. That's why we are having it on that first sentence saying that the Ugandans wanted now to be ruled using their laws that they make. Like we now look at in the Parliament of Uganda as we talk right now, you find all members of Parliament are Ugandans from different constituencies representing their various people. So that is what we call now independence. So this, we say that it was then, it was until 1945, that's when we had the last 3 representatives on the Legislative Council. Those were the Ugandans, whereby we talked of one picked from Central, we talked of one picked from Eastern Uganda, and then we had one picked from Western Uganda to represent Ugandans. That is where we talked of names like, we mentioned names like Kawalia Kagwa, who was nominated to represent Central, and we understood that these people went to that parliament through nominations. And then we had Eastern, that is where we had Yekonia Zerabamzale, and then we had Petero Nyangabia Akiki, that is from Western, representing the Western side or the Western part of Uganda. And we say that later on in 1946, the northern part of Uganda was also given a representative, that was Mr. Yekosofati Inyon, and we have the representation coming like that. Up to now, as I said, the Ugandan parliament is having Ugandans in it right now. But before that, it was called Legislative Council for the British, whose main role was to set laws. And then we also have advising the British government on how to handle matters in line with leadership. We also have the people wanting independence in order to regain their lost land. Remember, we talked about the 1900 Buganda Agreement, whereby we say the land ownership was removed from the land owners, the ones who had owned the land. And the land ownership was now to belong to 2 parties. That is Britain, that's now where we had the Crown land, and then the Kabaka and the chiefs. That is where we had the Milo land. So people wanted independence such that land ownership was to be given back to them. That is another reason. And then we have ending racial discrimination. To end racial discrimination. Racial discrimination, we write it racial discrimination. To discriminate means there are some people that you're favoring and there are those that you are not. Something like having a biased mind in that you favor others and you leave others to suffer. Now, when it comes to racial discrimination, we mean discriminating people according to their race. This is the skin color, what we are meaning. Which means that there was that unfair treatment which was given to the blacks in Uganda, and then, of course, the whites were given a proper care. So that one, they wanted to end it in a way that everyone was to be seen equal. Everyone was to be seen important, not others being of less value and others of more importance. So that was another reason as to why Ugandans wanted to get their own independence. The third one tells us that they wanted to end unfair policies. To end unfair policies. There were unfair policies. For example, we talked of payment of taxes, whereby we say that the British imposed or brought in the issue of Ugandans paying taxes to the British government. And we say that these taxes were too heavy. It was a lot of money. So such policies made people in Uganda to wanting like this system, they wanted these British to stop ruling them, such that at least they could rule themselves and such things to be scrapped off. And then we also have one saying that to end the colonial the colonial dominance, that is now, you'll find that the other ones were now dominating everywhere. So they wanted to find ways of, at least of being equal, that is with the other ones. We have the African kings and chiefs. Those are the ones we call the African leaders or the African rulers. The African rulers wanted to gain or to regain their lost powers. They wanted to regain their powers, which they had lost to the British government. Remember, we say that these local leaders were to be ruling their people according to the way the British wanted. In other words, they were not supposed to make their final decisions, but they were to consult the British government. They were to rule their very people the way the British wished, which means they had lost their powers. So there was need for them to regain their lost powers. And then we have them wanting to be given fair salaries. Those are the wages, to be given fair payment after doing work. Remember, the Ugandans were being used by the colonialists to work. So at least they wanted better payments. And in that after, or at the end of the day, like maybe if one is to be paid maybe weekly, daily, or monthly, at the end of that, a person was to get some reasonable amount of money, not giving someone very little money that cannot do anything on the person. So that's what also made them to fight for their independence. And then they wanted to regain their culture, which was destroyed by the British. Now, in that struggle, in that line of the struggle, or during the struggle for independence, we are going to look at these people who had, who were the leaders, the ones who were spearheading these movements, met a lot of challenges, and every other person who was in the struggle. So you'll find that there were problems that these people faced as they were struggling for independence. The first one tells us that these people, remember, they are those who went in for wars. They are those who went in for wars. For example, we talk of the Lamogi Rebellion, we talked of the Nyangire Rebellion, we talked of the Mwanga's resistance, And when you go to primary 6, you also add other rebellions that took place in other countries. For us, we are only limited. We are talking about the ones which were in Uganda here. So you'll find that in those rebellions, remember, in every war, there is exchange of weapons. I mean, you are exchanging bullets, for example. So you'll find people have to die. So such people who are resistant, who are trying to refuse the ideas of the British to fight against their policies, some of them lost their lives. And then, of course, due to that, due to the wars, or even the property had to be destroyed. And then there were others were arrested and they were sent into exile. For example, we shall be looking at the exile of Kabaka Mutesa, the two of Uganda. We shall be coming to look at that. And then we shall also be looking at others being imprisoned, others were taken to prison, others were tortured. They were tortured seriously. So all those are the problems that they faced. And then we also have the widespread of illiteracy among the people in Uganda. You'll find there were others who did not think ahead. That is due to lack of knowledge. They were illiterate on what was happening. They were ignorant on what was happening. So it also became a problem. And of course, this brought disunity also among people. You could find as others are fighting against the colonialists, there are others who are supporting the colonialists. For example, we mentioned in the previous lesson a name that is Semei Kakungulu. We say Semei Kakungulu was a British agent who helped Colonel Henry Colville to go and arrest Kabaka Mwanga and Omukama Kabalega when they were hiding in Lango. So you could see such things happening in that others were again joining the colonialists and they were now able to have the other ones fail in their mission. So those are the problems that these people met. And then on that very page 43, we have the heading asking us for the reasons why it was easy for the British to defeat the resistances in Africa, in Uganda in particular. We say the first one is that the Ugandans, of course, did not have the fighting skills. We talked about these things even in the previous lesson. The Ugandans didn't have better fighting skills. We said Ugandans did not have better weapons for fighting compared to the other ones who had their superior ones. You could find that the Ugandans were disunited. I have already talked about these agents who worked with the British. So those are the issues among others that brought or that made them to be defeated, or their resistances to be defeated. We are going to page 44, which gives us about the Bataka Federation and the Uganda Farmers Union. We are saying this one was founded, or it was started by, it was led by Ignatius Kangave Musaze. That is the person that we shall be abbreviating his name as I.K. Musaze. We are going to be having that name dominating in your class. Oh, very, very common in your examination papers. You will find almost in every question paper, you will see I.K. Musaze. So it's a name that you must understand right now up to the end of your life, let me say, because you need to be having it. There are very many questions which are going to be coming from that gentleman. His name is Ignatius Kangave Musaze. We can write this in abbreviation form. I for Ignatius, then we put K for Kangave, then we now write Musaze. So we need to understand this. As I have said, time is now. We are saying Ignatius Kangave Musaze. This one is Ignatius Kangave Musaze. Sometimes you write it with a single. We are saying there were demands. There is some correction you need to make here. There are demands. This one is not a point, as you are seeing it dotted also as a point. No, we are having 44. We are saying they were led, these Bataka people, were led by Ignatius Kangave Musazi. Then we have their rights. Please underline that as a subheading because we want to look at what were they demanding for, or what were their rights. And the first one, you are saying they wanted some of the chiefs to be removed from the Lukiko, and then they wanted more members of the Lukiko to be elected by the people, not just them being there. They did not want the fixed prices of cotton which were put. You'll find that there were some fixed prices in some cash crops. Remember, we talked about cash crop growing, that is as a solution to people getting money to pay as a tax. We asked that question some time back. How or why did the colonialists introduce cash crop growing? We say they wanted Ugandans to grow these crops such that they could get the money to sell. I mean, they could get the crops to sell and they get the money to go and pay as a tax. So that's why they were encouraging people to grow these cash crops. And also we say that they wanted these cash crops to be taken to their home countries to be used as raw materials by their industries. They wanted the Lukiko to be independent from the British, and then we are saying that they wanted to keep Uganda separate from the rest of Uganda, and then also they wanted the land ownership to be returned to the people instead of belonging to the Kabaka and the British. Of course, we understood that during the signing of the 1900 Uganda Agreement, these land owners that we are calling here the Bataka were not happy with that agreement. Reason being, land ownership was now removed from them and was given to only two parties, as I have already said, the Kabaka and the British government. So they were no longer having it. And then we also say they did not want Uganda to be part of the East African Federation. This, of course, it made us to understand Sir Andrew Cohen, that is in the other lesson, in the other topic, when we are looking at the governors in Uganda. We said Sir Andrew Cohen exiled Kabaka Mutesa II to Britain. And we shall be looking at why we say that the Kabaka had opposed the idea of forming the East African Federation. A federation, we define it as a group of countries that come together as one. So you'll find that the British had wanted to put Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, much as they were independent countries, but they were to be joined, or they were to be united with the same aims or goals as one. Of course, the Kabaka refused that idea. We say the king opposed the idea of forming the East African Federation, and this made Sir Andrew Cohen to send him into exile, that is to Britain, where he served his punishment. We are saying also the Kabaka was demanding for Uganda's independence instead of Uganda's independence. So those are the things that made Andrew Cohen, being a governor of Uganda by that time, to send the Kabaka into exile. Now, when the Kabaka was in exile, it brought what we call the Kabaka's crisis in Uganda. We are going to talk about the Kabaka's crisis. Kabaka's crisis. This was in Uganda. So we are going to ask ourselves a question. What do we mean by a crisis? I'm sure you must have heard about people saying crisis, 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 but you have not been bothered to find out what exactly it means. Today we must understand it. What is a crisis? In a simple understanding, or in a simple language, we can say a crisis means absence of something. At home you find that sometimes the water goes from the tap. You go, you get the tap, you turn it on, no water is coming. There people will say there is a water crisis in this home. Why? Water is not there. You can find that you got the socket, you tap the switch, there is no light coming. There is a crisis in electricity. What does it mean? It's not there. Sometimes you find people don't have what to eat. People don't have what to eat, and people say there is a food crisis in this family today. What does it mean? No food to be eaten. So that is what we mean by crisis. I want you, and I'm sure you have understood it today, in case you didn't know about it. So a crisis simply means absence of something. So here we are looking at the Kabaka's crisis, which means the absence of the Kabaka. So we shall simply say the Kabaka's crisis was the time, this was the period, or we can use the word time, both are the same. This was the period in Uganda. It was a period in Uganda when the Baganda did not have, I hope you can now complete, did not have what? A king. Their king is the one we call Kabaka. So we are simply saying Kabaka's crisis refers to the period, or we can say it refers to the time in Uganda when the Baganda did not have a king. Therefore, we shall ask ourselves a question: what had happened to their king? Of course, the answer is already given. We said their king was in exile. So we can say this is because, we are now giving the reason, this is because their king was sent into exile. Who sent him into exile? We say this one was Sir Andrew Cohen, who was the governor in Uganda at that time. And we say this happened in 1953. So we need also to be able to explain things like that. Their Kabaka was in exile, therefore they didn't have a Kabaka. So at that time, of course, we need to know that the people in Uganda were not happy with the decision that was made, or which was taken by these people, by the British, through Sir Andrew Cohen. So what happened was the Baganda did a lot of things to show that they were not happy with that decision. In other words, they were now demanding for their Kabaka to be brought back to their land. So they had a lot of issues that they organized. We have one, this one is a little missing here, but of course we are now going to add it. Remember, we have said the Kabaka was sent into exile. Reason, he opposed the idea of forming the East African Federation. Then we also say that he was also demanding for Uganda's independence. And we say that thereafter, the Baganda were not happy. Therefore, how did the Baganda show that they were annoyed with the decision of the British to exile their Kabaka? You will find that the Baganda could organize, they staged riots, demonstrations. They were able to have what we call boycotting. The Baganda boycotted. To boycott, I told you in a previous lesson that this is a situation whereby people agree on, like they can, let me give you an example. You could find during that time that the British also had, there were those British who had also their shops, as they were also having shops, supermarkets, whatever, or every kind of business. And then we have also the Africans, the Ugandans also having their shops. So what the Baganda did was that they mobilized each other and they agreed never to go and buy things from the shops of the whites, and they could only go to the shops of the what? Of the Ugandans. That was to show a sign that they were not happy with them. So the other ones are there waiting for someone to come to their shop. People are not going to their shops. People are only flocking to the other side of the what? Of the blacks. So that's what we call boycotting. So such things happened, and when the British realized that these people were really serious, they were annoyed with their decision, of course they had to organize the return of the Kabaka. The Kabaka had to come back, and this is now what we are going to look at as the Namirembe Agreement, that is of 1954. On that very page 45, we have the Namirembe Agreement. Here we are saying this was a conference which was held at Namirembe Hill in 1954, that is to prepare for the return of the Kabaka from exile. So sometimes they can ask us, why was it called Namirembe Agreement? I want you to get this because when it comes to agreements signed in Uganda, there are very many. We have been talking about the 1900 Uganda Agreement. I hope you finished to understand that 1900 Uganda Agreement. This is not the one we are talking about today. We also had the 1890 Uganda Agreement, which was signed between Kabaka Mwanga, and then we have Captain Frederick Lugard. This one is also there. And then today, we are now looking at the 1954 Namirembe Agreement. Namirembe Agreement. So this one, we can call them treaties or agreements. Remember this. So we can also call this the 1954 Namirembe Treaty, since we said and we have understood that a treaty means an agreement. Here we are saying this agreement was signed, it was called the Namirembe Agreement because it was signed at that Namirembe Hill. And why was it signed? We are saying it was signed in order to have the Kabaka brought back from exile. That is from Britain, where he was serving his sentence. Here now we are saying this agreement was signed by, of course, parties. We are having the Namirembe Agreement. It's the one we are talking about. So when you see Namirembe Agreement, my friend, don't again go back and bring issues of the 1900 Uganda Agreement. Don't go and bring issues of the 1890 Uganda Agreement. We are on the Namirembe Agreement that we are saying in 1954. After the Kabaka was exiled to Britain, that is in 1953, as we have it here. So here we are saying it was called the Namirembe Agreement because it took place at that Namirembe Hill. And the reason for it signed was to have the king come back or brought back. Therefore, we are going to have the representatives. When we talk of representatives, I told you at one time that an agreement is not signed by everyone. Others. Of course, here we shall have Britain is going to sign an agreement, a peace agreement with Uganda, such that there will be peace brought back to Uganda. Now, the British were having, that is Michael Chintu, Sir Kate Hancock, that is for Britain, and then Uganda had Michael Chintu. That was the particular. So we are having Michael Chintu at that time. So these are the two people who signed that agreement in order for the Kabaka to be returned or to be brought back to Uganda. And of course, later on, the king was brought back and there was a lot of happiness in Uganda. People were rejoicing for their king was returned or was brought back. We are now going back to what we said at first. We talked of people reacting through forming political parties, and here we are going to page 46. That's where we are going to have these political parties talked about. So we shall call this the formation of political parties. The formation of political parties in Uganda. We are going to reframe it like this. Here, I want you not even to blink your eye, because what we are going to talk about is something which is very, very interesting, and it's very important for you to understand. We are going to begin defining a political party. A political party can be defined as a group of people, that is, a registered group of people. A political party. A political party is a registered group of people There is a reason as why we are writing this registered, because you have to be registered with the Electoral Commission. A registered group of people with a party emblem, ready, or we shall simply say, with the aim of competing, ready to compete for what we call political power. Ready to compete for political power. Simple. A registered group of people. Sometimes you can say a registered association of members ready to compete for political power. Even if you don't say with the party emblem, but it's very important for you to know that this party has to get the emblem, the badge, the logo that they will be using. Now, what is the emblem? For example, you'll find that in the currently concluded elections, we had a lot of political parties taking part. Very many parties, and you find each party has got a symbol. There is that symbol that they are using for that party. I may not be able to give you all the symbols, but we know them. You find we have the National Resistance Movement, that is NRM. You find they can use the party symbol. There is a bus, and there is that thumb up. You find the one of Forum for Democratic Change. You find they have a key with the hand having two fingers like this. We have the one of that is National Unity Platform. I'm just giving you the common ones that I know you know. We have the National Unity Platform with the umbrella as the party symbol. So that is what we are looking at here. A political party should have that party symbol. That's what we are terming as the emblem. And this is aiming at competing for political power. However, when we go back to this, because we shall be saying during the early, in the early 1950s, this is what we shall be saying. During the early, or we shall say in the early 1950s. When we say 1950s, we are saying 1950, 1951, 1952, 1953, around that. That's what we call the early 1950s. During that time, many Ugandans started forming political parties. Many Ugandans started forming political parties. And we are going to ask a reason. Having understood this, in the early 1950s, many Ugandans started forming political parties. The question is, why? Which was the major reason? The major reason here was to demand for independence. To demand for independence. Take note of the spelling of this word, for it's very complicated. So this is the major reason. If we put it in bracket, this was the major reason. So if a question is asking you and it's specific, which was the major reason for the formation of political parties during the early 1950s? To demand for Uganda's independence. Then also, these political parties were also formed to unite people. We are now looking at the reasons as why these political parties were formed. to unite people, to bring people together. You find that is one of the importance of these political parties. You find people come together. For us, we belong to this party. We belong to this party. People come together as one because they have the same aims and objectives. There is one thing I want to make you understand here. We have the major reason for the formation of political parties during that time we call the early 1950s. That is to demand for independence. Then we need to know that even today, we still have political parties taking part in the struggle for political power. Today, don't again talk about independence. Uganda is already independent. Uganda attained her independence on 9th October 1962, which means if a question is asking you, why are people forming political parties today? Don't again say to demand for independence. No, independence was already granted to Uganda. So that one we shall cross you properly because you will have not understood the lesson well. So let's look at the examples of those political parties that took part or that were formed. First, we are having what you call the Uganda National Congress. We are now on the examples of political parties that were formed. Examples of political parties which were formed in Uganda by that time, and we are having the Uganda National Congress that we call Uganda in full now, Uganda National Congress. So we are going to say that this Uganda National Congress was formed by this gentleman, Ignatius Kangave Musazi, that we have also written as I.K. Musazi. And we need to note that this was the first political party to be founded, to be formed in Uganda. So it means that this gentleman, like I said, we are going to be talking much about him. He is going to be talked because of the good, because of the things that he did. We have said he is the one who founded the first political party in Uganda. That's what we call the Uganda National Congress. That was. Then we have also others like Uganda People's Congress (UPC). We have Uganda Congress Party (UCP). We have DP, and some of these political parties are still in existence. Like we are talking of DP. We are talking of Uganda People's Congress, UPC is also there. Then we had the Uganda People's Union by that time, and finally we have there the Kabaka's Party, Kabaka Yeka Party, KY Party. That is what they call Kabaka Yeka. We are having UNC, that is Uganda National Congress. As a subheading, we are saying it was founded by Ignatius Kangave Musazi, that is in 1952. As we say, during the early 1950s. So by 1952, Uganda had the first political party by Ignatius Kangave Musazi. The objectives, we are looking at the aims of its formation. The first one we said to demand for independence. That was the major one. Then we have promoting economy of the interest of the Ugandans, and then we are having uniting all the people of Uganda, and then to promote democracy in Uganda. We have DP, we have also its aims, and then we have UPC, that is on page 47. UPC, we are saying it was founded on March 10, 1960. That was now by Dr. Apollo Milton Obote, and of course we are saying that political parties that joined from UPC. We have the Uganda National Congress, and then we have the Uganda People's Union joining to dissolve now UNC, that is Uganda National Congress, and they now go to UPC. The aims are the same: to demand for independence, to unite Ugandans. Those are the things that we need to note here. And then we also need to note that we have the UPC winning the 1962 general elections, which were organized to grant Uganda independence. In the previous lesson, in the previous topic, we talked of the 1961 general elections, which were organized general elections. And we said in these elections, the results were that Democratic Party won. Now, another general election was organized in 1962. This is the year now Uganda got independence, and we said here, UPC won. And we shall ask ourselves a question: how did UPC win the Democratic Party that we said the DP had won the 1961 elections because it had very many representatives there? Now we are having the UPC, which we are saying it formed an alliance with the Kabaka Yeka. Kabaka Yeka. That is for the Kabaka. So in that alliance or in that combination, an alliance like two parties coming together so that they become stronger. So we are saying UPC managed to win because it formed an alliance with the Kabaka Yeka. That is what made it to win. We are going to the last lesson is about, the last subheading is about, that's on that very page 48. Of course, there is an activity that you must do, which is guiding you on what we have talked about, the UPC, Kabaka Yeka, and the rest of the things are there. We are having the disadvantages of political parties, or we find that these political parties can bring disunity among people, much as they are to unite those, but you'll find that different political parties start hating one another. The members from the other political party will hate members from the other side, and we have seen people going into wars. People end up fighting because of their differences in political parties, which is not good. How Uganda became independent, we are saying preparations for Uganda's independence were made by calling for a conference, that is the Lancaster Conference, and we are saying the main reason here was to plan for Uganda's independence. That's what we have on that page 48. And then the recommendations, we are saying the leader of government was to be the prime minister. That's why you find that when Uganda won independence, UPC, the leader of UPC, that is Apollo Milton Obote, was now made the first executive prime minister of Uganda. And then we shall have the Kabaka being the first ceremonial president. He was a president, but he didn't have the executive powers. That's what they call a ceremonial president. And then also Buganda was to remain part of Uganda as a protectorate, not it also being of its own. So those are the ones that we have there. We are now going to the last lesson, and then from this we shall call it done. And of course you will be having your work, your activity there to answer. Page 49 gives us Uganda as an independent country now. That is after independence being prepared. Now it is Independence Day that we have said for 9 October 1962. This is the year, this is the date when Uganda got her independence. Sometimes you need to be very careful when you are asked. The question can come saying, in which year did Uganda get independence? You can only extract the year in 1962. But if the question says, write the date is this one. You are writing the whole date, 9 October. Don't only write the year now. That's not the date. 9 October 1962. So we are saying that UPC, which was under Dr. Apollo Milton Obote, had made an alliance with the Kabaka Yeka, which was for the Kabaka, and they won the 1962 general elections. Therefore, it made now the British government to give Obote, who was made now the prime minister, what we call the instruments of power. Instruments of power, get space in that book and write this. Instruments of power that were given to the prime minister. that were given the Prime Minister of Uganda. Of course, this was now Dr. Apollo Milton Obote. So we have the instruments of power. We are now going to look at things that were given to Obote to show that he now had authority over Uganda. We had things like the key to the state house. Obote was given the key to the state house. That was one. Obote was given the key to the parliament. Key to the national parliament. That was another instrument of power. Like I said, I want to write this instrument of power. These are common things which can be asked to you. Find space in that book. If you can't find it, then you get your diary and add this. I want you to write this down. And then we have also, Obote was also given the national attributes. National attributes. These attributes are the ones that we call symbols, the national symbols. For example, we have the coat of arms. Coat of arms, which acts as the national symbol. National coat of arms. And then we have the flag. That is now, I mean the Uganda national flag, the one we see today having those three colors, black, yellow, red. Obote was given to that as an instrument of power. On that day of independence, we have the lowering of the Union Jack. We say before then, the British flag, which was called the Union Jack, was being flown in Uganda. It's the one which was in Uganda. Then, when Uganda got independence, it meant that Uganda was no longer under the hands of the British. So Uganda was free now. So Ugandans were given their own flag to raise. So we need to know that on that day, that is at Kololo, it happened that the Union Jack was lowered. That is by Sydney Small. That is the one who lowered the Union Jack. The Union Jack was lowered. We are going to look at two things here because questions ask you, what happened to the following during independence? We have said the British flag called the Union Jack was lowered. We have said it was lowered by Sydney Small. Sydney Small. And then we had now the Uganda national flag. The Uganda national flag was raised. Get the spelling of raised. Or sometimes we can say it was hoisted. It was hoisted up for its very first time. For its very first time. And there now celebrations began. So when Sydney Small raised their Union Jack, Major Kanuti Akoremo, we have it, we have not written it. This one was by, he was a Major Kanuti, Major Kanuti Ilakut. Major Kanuti Ilakut Akoremo. Major Kanuti Ilakut, this is letter I, this is L. Major Kanuti Ilakut Akoremo, who raised the Uganda national flag for its very first time. So such a person, we also remember him in Uganda's history. We can be asked a question, why is Major Kanuti Akoremo remembered in the history of Uganda? He is the one who raised the Uganda flag for the first time, that is at Kololo. And that makes us remember him. So those are the events that happened, and I have told you from the raising of the flag it symbolized that Uganda was now free from colonialists. Uganda was no longer in the hands of the British. Instead, Uganda was now being ruled by a fellow Ugandan. So that is what happened on that Independence Day, that is on 9th October 1962. So for that, we come to the end of our lessons. The remaining parts of the book, like page 50, also has got an exercise. Make sure you always write all these exercises and have your book ready, such that when time comes for us to come back to school, you will be presenting your book to the teachers for marking, and it has to be clean. Don't bring the book when it's already dirty. So I should say we are done with our small booklets for primary 5 that we added to the other one for second term's work. May God continue blessing you. See you another time when we are discussing term 3 content. May God be with you ever.